Measuring presidents by their first 100 days goes back to Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal.
President Trump's first 100 days have been largely about the trade deal, and so far there's been more wheeling than dealing, especially with China.
Today, the president downshifted on his auto tariffs to eliminate overlapping taxes on car makers.
They would not be hit by both a 25% tariff on imported vehicles and a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum.
Ed O'Keefe is in Warren, Michigan, where the president is holding a 100-day rally. Ed?
Good evening. The president's back in this battleground state, key to his victory, and he's touting his work on the economy and with tariffs. But as he marks the first stretch of his second term, people we spoke to here outside Motor City fear the economy could get worse. Touching down in Michigan, President Trump brought with him good news for the state's key industry. Automakers will still face a 25% tariff on imported cars and parts, but not an additional tariff on other critical materials, including steel and aluminum. The news was cheered by the big three American car makers, though customers will likely still pay more for a new car, and it does nothing to cushion the economic pain of auto workers Scott Duty and Tabitha Noble, who were furloughed just before Trump took office.
What does that then cause you to have to worry about in terms of costs on a day-to-day basis?
You know, your food went up, gas went up, our wages went down.
Utility bills have went up. Groceries have went sky high.
Both agreed tariffs could eventually bring more jobs to the U.S. Duty voted for Trump.
I just think it's going to take time for more to happen.
Noble voted for Kamala Harris and is more pessimistic.
Unemployment's went up. Every day, somebody's closing their doors because nobody's going in to buy anything.
But that's not the case at the holiday market just outside Detroit. Store director Eric Schneider says customers aren't yet whining about higher prices, but they may soon pay more for goods like imported wine.
We haven't changed our prices.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if it keeps up...
Yeah, because wine, liquor, you operate on thin margins.
So far, Schneider says business is steady.
The state of the economy here in Michigan is what?
It has been pretty healthy, but, you know, again, it's kind of the wait and see.
Sort of this sense of something could happen, but nothing's happening now.
Yeah, it's impending, looming doom.
In an interview today, the president defended his economic record by claiming the price of eggs, gas, and groceries are coming down. That depends on where you are and what exactly you're buying. He said any pain from tariffs are part of what he calls a transition period, and that ultimately, quote, great days are ahead.
Okay.
Guys?
Ed O'Keefe in Warren, Michigan tonight with the president. Thank you. And so, John, you were there the last time Donald Trump finished his first 100 days. Must be kind of a deja vu situation.
Especially because the topic was exactly the same. America first. It was at a place called the Ames True Temper plant in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And he was there to sign 2 executive orders about trade. But it was like a starter kit compared to what he's doing now with these much more robust tariffs. And Peter Navarro was there. Okay. His trade advisor now was there in 2017. That's a line of continuity, but 2 differences. One, in 2017, he touted the National Association of Manufacturers, who were so optimistic about what he's doing. If you look at their publications now, they're worried about these tariffs. And the other thing is that the Ames True Temper plant, the factory is closed, and Bloomberg reports that it appears their products are now made in China.
Wow. Same conversation, though.
Absolutely.
All right.
We begin tonight with a rollback in Motor City. The president was outside of Detroit to mark 100 days in office and touted his plan to give relief to the crucial American car industry from some of the tariffs that are expected to increase prices on production. Kelly O'Grady joins me now to walk me through all of this. What does this change mean, Kelly?
Okay, so remember, there were all of these different tariffs that the auto industry was subject to. There was an industry-specific tariff. There was an aluminum steel-specific tariff. There were tariffs on goods coming from Mexico and Canada that weren't covered under that trade deal between those 3 countries. This executive order just kind of streamlines everything, makes sure that they're not going to stack up on top of each other. So now, autos coming in from outside the country, as well as parts, are just subject to that 25% auto industry tariff. There's also a couple of concessions. If a car is 85% manufactured in the U.S., no tariff, right? It's all about bringing manufacturing here.
Yeah.
And then there's also this offset thing. Suffice to say, it's basically like a reimbursement that a car company can apply for at the end of the year that helps offset that tariff a little bit.
Huh. Okay, so are prices going to go up or down?
Well, you would think that they're still going to go up, right? Because there's still a tariff there.
Yes.
But, you think about it, this is just one industry. I mean, how often are we buying a car? Not that much. You still have price increases that are expected on all sorts of goods. And, I was looking at the CBS News polling, and 69% of Americans don't feel the president is doing enough to bring prices down. And we got some data today that speaks to that, the consumer confidence. We talk about this all the time. The expectations for the economy have reached the lowest level since October of 2011. People don't feel good about the future.
Right. What about companies? Earnings season is happening. What do they feel? I guess this isn't about the future, it's about the past. What are those earnings reports showing?
Well, the past is okay, but we also always look on these earnings calls for what do they think about the future, the guidance. And constantly we are hearing either them slashing their 2025 guidance or pulling it entirely. Adidas, UPS, today alone, they both said there's uncertainty. UPS, that you probably saw a headline, they cut a bunch of jobs. Right. That was more about something that was already announced. But job openings today, we also saw across the board, less than expected. Speaks to businesses not wanting to hire.
Usually we begin with something that happened.
But not tonight. Tonight we begin with something that didn't happen.
The economy didn't grow, not in the first quarter of this year. It shrank at an annual rate of 0.3%.
It's the first time in 3 years since COVID that the economy has receded, adding to the prospects of a recession.
Continuing with the economic report card, the good news is the threat of inflation is easing. Consumer prices rose at an annual rate of 2.3% in March, down from 2.7% the month before.
But that could change as the effects of the tariffs kick in, making products more expensive. As they tried to beat the price hikes, consumers increased their spending in March by a solid 0.7%.
And here to put it all in perspective for us is Kelly O'Grady. Kelly?
Yeah, there is a disconnect between where the economy stands and where it could be going. And we saw that in the report on gross domestic product, or GDP. GDP measures all the economic activity in the U.S. And last quarter, for the first time in 3 years, it shrank.
Most analysts expected the economy to grow somewhat in the first quarter of 2025.
100 days ago this week, we inherited the wreckage of 4 years of economic disaster.
President Trump blamed the previous administration and said the full benefits of tariffs haven't kicked in yet. But White House trade advisor Peter Navarro tied slowing growth to businesses and consumers stocking up ahead of tariffs.
We had a fairly extraordinary surge of imports that was totally driven by the rest of the world trying to get their products in here before the tariffs took full hold.
Imports in the first quarter surged more than 40%. Since the U.S. bought more than it sold, that caused GDP to go down. The brightest spot in today's report was a 22% increase in money companies spend to build their businesses in the U.S.
That's Apple for $500 billion.
The White House spent this afternoon with CEOs from NVIDIA to Johnson & Johnson. But over the last 3 months, we've spoken to small business owners, such as Lynn Alessi, who depend on imports. She told us the tariff uncertainty is causing paralysis.
I have all my customers putting on the brakes, saying, what are we going to do? Where can we move to?
Alessi's client, Karen Sadaka, said producing clothing on a large scale in the U.S., like she does, would require a big overhaul.
It's too much, too fast, and you're hurting companies. You just can't turn around on a dime and say, okay, well, we're going to increase you 40, 50%. Where's the infrastructure to make the goods in this country?
So, Kelly, if the economy is being affected by these tariffs in all these different ways, is it possible to look through all of that at what a kind of the central economic picture looks like?
Yes, and that was actually the silver lining of this report, because when you strip out all of that import and export volatility, the tariff noise, the underlying economy, it's what we call core GDP, that actually rose 3% last quarter. Where I'm concerned, though, is consumer spending drives 2/3 of GDP, and that came in a bit weaker this quarter than it normally does. So if negative consumer sentiment leads to less spending, you could still have a GDP problem next quarter. And let's remember, 2 quarters of negative GDP growth back to back indicates a recession.
The R word. So what's the Fed likely to do here?
Oh, they're between a rock and a hard place, because a negative quarter of GDP, this would be sparking a conversation of when are we getting that rate cut to fuel growth. But with the threat of higher inflation because of these tariffs, cutting rates could spur inflation higher. So next week, the Fed's meeting, we're expecting them to pause unless we were to get some kind of wild jobs report on Friday, but that's unlikely.
As tariffs threaten to raise the price of new cars, Americans are racing to the showrooms.
Chris Van Cleve reports they are trying to beat the price hikes.
Akio Miller and his wife are accelerating their search for an SUV.
It is very smooth drive, too.
Test driving a new Hyundai that could soon see a price increase due to a 25% tariff.
With everything going on with the up and down with the tariffs and the car prices, I was like, you know what, we need to probably look like sooner than later.
You feel like if you don't buy it now, you're going to pay more later?
I definitely feel that way. Cars are already expensive, and then now they tacking on the extra tariff taxes, I like to call it. It's going to be way out of price range.
The Millers are far from alone. March saw new car sales surge nationwide, jumping over 17% from February and nearly 12% over the same time last year, while driving down dealer inventory of pre-tariff vehicles by 10%. Economist Patrick Anderson.
You got a lot of sales in March that were basically people buying ahead of the tariffs. And that means, unfortunately, we're going to have lower sales later on when those people aren't buying cars that they originally intended to buy.
90% of this car was made in Korea. Seems like a vehicle that would get hit with a significant tariff. Its sticker price right now is almost $51,000. Would that go up?
No doubt it would go up. The question as to how much it would go up.
That unknown led to a record March for George Glassman's Subaru, Hyundai, Kia, and Mitsubishi dealerships in suburban Detroit.
We've stocked up in anticipation of higher prices.
How long do you think then, after tariffs would go into effect, that you would start seeing that ripple into your costs and ultimately what people pay?
It'd be immediate. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
To that point, the sales surge at this Honda dealership outside Nashville means their most in-demand vehicles, they've got about 30 days on hand. Normally, it would be 60. It's likely, nationally, those most sought-after vehicles will be among the first to see the price impact of tariffs as they're restocked.